something I personally believe that BMW messed up severely with the 1300. The BMW R1300 GS. It surely turned the ADV community upside down with its completely revamped design and sportier look. Gone is the iconic and well-recognized headlight that stuck around for a decade, and we could also see the implementation of more electronics and various rider assists. Buying a brand new model is surely associated with risks, as it's more or less a worldwide maiden voyage for a lot of new parts and components. Turns out that BMW had a few very busy first months after the 1300 started shipping, dealing with things such as starter relay replacements as well as encountering issues with the updated Vario luggage system. Luckily for me, I haven't had any bad luck at all with my 1300, which means that I could focus entirely on the riding and getting to know the bike without any distractions. So that leaves us with the question: how much does the R1300 GS differ from the R1200 and 1250 GS in terms of daily riding? When we shot the presentation video, one of the first things I noticed when riding back and forth outside the dealership for the riding away sequence was how light and nimble the bike felt. I mean, I was only going around 30-40 kilometers an hour doing U-turns to get a few good shots. But that first initial ride was enough for me to understand that this is a bike I'm gonna have a lot of fun on. And then when we shot the rest of the riding sequences and I could test some shorter twists, it was really a receipt that this bike was something I want to take to the big mountain passes as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this was back in November and all the passes, including Glaubenberg where we are at the moment, had closed for the winter, so there was not so many fun roads left to ride on. Plus the temperatures were beginning to drop quite drastically and it was raining more or less every other day. So the conditions for testing the bike properly were not optimal, to say the least. However, in March, it was starting to get a little bit warmer. We had a few good weekends with around 20-26 degrees Celsius. And that meant that I could actually start pushing the bike a bit harder and test the limits of it a little bit more. The thing I like the most about the 1300 is definitely how it handles, both at low speeds but also during dynamic riding. It's a very, very well balanced bike with a lot of torque. And what really stands out compared to other brands' adventure models is that when you're braking hard on the 1300, it doesn't dive, it more like sits down, which gives you even more control of the braking. Initially, I had actually some complaints about the brakes being a bit weaker compared to my previous 1200 and 1250. Normally, it's enough for me to just use one finger when braking hard, which is quite convenient as I'm always having my index fingers resting on the levers, probably an old habit from the time I used to ride enduro. But for the braking period, I had to constantly use two fingers and apply a lot of force to actually brake hard, and that got me a bit worried. So when I handed the bike in for the first service, I mentioned this to the mechanic so he could take a closer look at it. Afterwards, he said that can't find anything wrong with your brakes. But what he did tell me is that he cleaned the discs and probably the pads as well, in hopes that they would remove any kind of residue or film or whatever from the production. Turns out, it solved the problem, because now my 1300 brakes just as good as my 1250 and 1200 did. So definitely a big relief. One thing that BMW definitely improved is the gear shifting experience. I remember my 1200 being very clunky, missing gears occasionally and being overall quite unrefined. 1250, definitely a step up or two in terms of smoothness, especially when shifting between the first and the second gear. That was something I really tried to avoid, by the way, on the 1200, because shifting between first and second gear, it could just go bang! and then send you into neutrals, like, what the hell, did my gearbox break or what happened? But on the 1300, it's so buttery smooth, yet still very firm and direct. I can't actually recall one single time that this bike has sent me into neutral or missed a gear or anything like this. It just works, and it does so very smoothly. The 1300 is for me a very comfortable bike to ride on, even though that the stock seat is noticeably harder than on the 1250. I'm 186 or 6'1" tall, and I haven't really experienced any noticeable leg or arm pain. I remember on the 1250 that after a few hours I could get some strain in my shoulders and in my traps, but that would quickly be solved by just adding a 25mm bar riser. And on the 1300, I actually, at the day when I picked up the bike, I immediately installed bar risers on it, and probably that made the difference, because so far no arm pain at all on this bike, so that's quite good. And sometimes it's also when you're having a long ride and it's long between the breaks, it's so nice on an adventure bike like this to be able to just stand up, stretch your legs, stretch your arms for a minute or two, and just vary your body position, and then the pain is gone. So super good to have that feature. One good thing though is that I can adjust the windscreen position at any speed without letting go of my handlebars, something that was much harder to do on the 1250. And that is because on the 1300 it's electronically adjustable. As of on the 1250, you had this knob on the right hand side which you had to turn, and at certain speeds, I mean, when you were going fast enough, the wind force was too strong, so it was really hard to raise that windshield. So having it electronically adjustable, it's a big plus, to be honest. So regarding the looks, might be a bit controversial, but I actually like the looks of the 1300, I mean, at least from the side. The front, however, could have been a little bit more attractive, especially the whole headlight, windshield, wind deflector combination. Can't really unsee this like underbite that the 1300 seems to have, as they basically put the radar where the old headlight used to be. So here I definitely prefer the 1250 design more, even after getting used to the 1300 design for the past months. Some people believe that the GS has lost a bit of its rough adventure look / identity, and that it went more towards looking like a pure street bike, like the S1000R, for example. I can partly agree with this, but however, I mean, I still like it. It's a more sporty design, and in the end, I mean, these bikes, they are basically made to be customized. You can make the 1300 look like an epic touring machine, as well as a super aggressive off-road machine. In the end, it's all up to you how you customize it, basically. Something I personally believe that BMW messed up severely with the 1300 is the user interface. For whatever reason, they decided to get rid of the ignition button in the front and move it over to the right-hand side of the handlebars, replacing the heating button from the 1200 and 1250 models. So not only is it more cumbersome to control and adjust the heated grips and seat, but they also got rid of the traction control / electronic suspension button on the left-hand side in favor of their new multi-rocker switch button. Now, if you don't know what the multi-rocker switch button does, it's basically a quick menu system for the stuff that you adjust the most frequently, such as the adaptive cruise control, heating, electronic windscreen, traction control, electronic suspension. The thing is, you can only assign 2 of these at the same time. One with immediate control when pressing the rocker switch, the button with the up and down arrows, and the second one by pressing and holding the function list button. So this means that if I, for example, have the windscreen adjust and the heating assigned for the moment, and I want to turn off my ABS when spontaneously hitting a gravel road, or if I, for example, want to quickly stiffen up my suspension, I need to start reassigning the functions while keeping my eyes on the road. Doesn't sound like the safest thing to do now, does it? Now, if we compare this to the 1250 GS, here I had one button for direct access to the heating, one button for direct access to the traction control or ABS, and one button for direct access to my electronic suspension. Also, where the function list button is now on the 1300, we used to have a button for controlling the headlight switching between low beam and the DRL or daytime running light. Also, the button for turning on and off the auxiliary lights had been completely removed, and the only way you can turn on or off the auxiliary lights on the 1300 is by going into the menu system, find a setting, and adjust it from there. Even though I'm a big fan of various assists such as ABS, traction control, electronic and automatic suspension, cruise control and all that kind of stuff, I'm also a firm believer that whatever can be turned off manually should be able to. This bike is equipped with adaptive cruise control, which means that the bike itself will take care of braking and acceleration to keep a certain distance to the vehicle in front. Good idea for sure, I love it on my car, but after using it for a few times now on the bike, not really sure I'm a big fan of it on a motorcycle. The problem also is that the adaptive part of this cruise control cannot be turned off permanently. You can only turn it off for the moment, but when you then turn off the bike, you go have a break, lunch or whatever, you come back, you fire up the bike again, and the whole adaptive part is re-engaged. And that is something I find to be quite annoying. Also, the Dynamic Brake Assistant, or DBC, that is included with Riding Mode Pro, has scared me more than once when we've been doing dynamic riding. So even though I set it to interfere as late as possible, it can actually panic brake at any time when we're doing dynamic riding in the twisties. And the first few times when it was activated, I thought, oh shit, it's something wrong with the bike. It's like it's not responding on the throttle and it's like braking. And then I look down on the TFT and I can see this big red warning triangle just flashing. So it happened a couple of times when we were doing dynamic riding in the twisties, as I call it. We are quite close to each other, going pretty fast, still on a safe distance, coming into a little bit sharper turn, applying the brakes, starting to lean, letting go of the brakes, starting accelerating. And this dynamic braking assistant, I was like, no, you're gonna run into your friend in front, so I need to help you. And it's like cutting the power to the engine, start braking for me, messing up my whole turn. I'm not really sure I wanna have this kind of assistant. Luckily for me, this feature can be turned off permanently and it won't be turned on as default when starting the bike, just like with the adaptive cruise control. This might be a good feature for some riders to have, but personally, it simply puts me in more danger than what it helps me. Not sure I would say it's an issue or a bad thing, but the front wheel tends to get very light during hard acceleration, especially when riding with luggage or with a pillion. But then again, as I'm coming from the GS Adventure that both had an 11-liter larger fuel tank plus upper crash bars with attached mini bags to them, and going to the much lighter 1300, I mean, of course it's going to be a difference. Not to say also that there's more torque in the 1300, so all these combined, I mean, of course. Hopefully this issue, if you will be less noticeable once I get to install the Lone Rider upper and lower crash bars. And to these I will also attach our upcoming motor lights and of course also my mini bag where I keep all the emergency stuff and daily ride accessories and so on. And all these combined should be enough to get the front a bit heavier so I have more control when accelerating hard out from the curves. If I could decide freely on what to change with the 1300, what would that be? Actually, not much, apart from going back to the previous user interface with a one-click access to the most frequently used functions, such as switching between riding modes, turning on and off the ABS, and traction control, switching between comfort and dynamic suspension settings, and of course also quick adjustments of the heating. The less menu navigation I need to do and the less I have to take my eyes off the road, the better it is. I want quick and easy access. That's it. I would probably also like to rework the front a bit. I mean, the stock windshield and the wind deflectors are ugly as. But luckily, we are having our own windshields coming very soon for the 1300, so hopefully I won't have to ride around with this one for much longer. So with all these pros and cons, do I regret trading my R1250 GS Adventure in for the 1300? No, definitely not. Yeah, even though the 1300 has a very cumbersome user interface compared to its predecessors, I mean, the weight, handling and the overall riding experience definitely make up for it. I still stand fast by saying that this is the best bike I've ever ridden. The confidence that it gives you and the handling combined with that raw power and torque, I mean, it's simply unbelievable. So if you haven't test ridden the 1300 GS yet, do yourself the favor, or not, depending on how light you want your wallet to become, of visiting your local BMW dealer and ask if you can take one out for a spin. And I mean, not just a quick 15-20 minute ride, ask them if you can have the bike for a full day or even for a full weekend. I have a strong feeling that you won't regret it. Anyway, that's my honest and unfiltered opinion of the 1300 GS after owning and riding one for the past 6 months. We are actually soon having a big video coming up where we are going to find out which of the R1300 GS and the R1250 GS Adventure that is most suitable for two-up traveling. We're gonna have completely unfiltered and unbiased opinions from 2 riders and 2 passengers. So if you're planning to switch bike for this year, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss this video. As always guys, thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one. Ride safe!